This is Sportsline.
Good evening, Nashville. Welcome to Sportsline. Yours truly, John Burton, back on the Wednesday extravaganza. Sorry I missed you last week. I had the evening off, but it's good to be with you tonight. A lot going on tonight. We've got news from the Titans, news from Tennessee, and news from Vanderbilt, as today was National Signing Day. So recruits from all around the country making their intentions known, where they will play their next 4 to 5 years of college football. So obviously around here, that's big news for both Tennessee, Vanderbilt, and the rest of the SEC. The Titans introduced their new coaching staff today. Mike Vrabel's staff, offensive coordinator Matt LaFleur, defensive coordinator Dean Pease, and all the rest of the assistants were introduced formally today over at St. Thomas Sports Park. We'll hear from some of them coming up in the hour. Also want to hear from you, any remaining issues, questions, thoughts about the Super Bowl. Congratulations to the Philadelphia Eagles. They win their first ever Super Bowl championship. And well-deserved, I might add. Anytime you beat the Philadelphia or the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl, you've certainly earned it. Just ask the New York Giants. So the Eagles are the champs. So if you didn't get a chance to check in with Steve the last couple of days to give your thoughts on the Super Bowl, we can certainly do that for you as well. But first, as we said, it is National Signing Day. It is concluded. And it's actually the second National Signing Day for the first time, an early signing period, early signing day back in December. And, of course, today the big signing day as schools across the country bring in their new recruits. And who better to talk about that than our good buddy from 247sports.com and CBS Sports. He covers college football and recruiting. It's our good buddy Barton Simmons. Barton, it's the Barton and Burton show yet again, so welcome back to the show. I know it's a busy day for you. I appreciate a couple minutes.
Of course. Always happy to have the annual Barton and Burton show.
It's a tradition like no other, right? It's like the Masters.
Right.
Okay, so signing day pretty much in the books. We had the early signing day back in December, and that kind of set the table, I guess, for a lot of these schools to figure out what they needed to do leading up to today. Were there any big surprises across the country between what happened in December and what happened today?
I mean, there were a couple of surprises here and there. To me, not probably. I think definitely the biggest storyline is what Georgia did. I mean, yeah. Georgia was the story of the early signing period, and they were the story of the February signing day as well. I mean, they landed the number 2 cornerback in the country, a 5-star named Tyson Campbell. They flipped an Alabama commit named Quay Walker, who's a big-time outside linebacker, and they flipped a Michigan commit, who's a linebacker-safety hybrid kid named Otis Reese, and added a 6'5", super speedy wide receiver out of Texas named Tommy Bush to sort of top it all off. It was the perfect day for Georgia, and that allowed them to run away with the number 1 class in the country. One of the best classes from a ranking standpoint that we've seen since the highest ranked class since 2010 was Alabama's class last year in 2017, and this one was within decimal points of being on that same level. And I think we've all seen what that 2017 Alabama class did with the way they impacted the national title game. So it's certainly easy to see this class making the same kind of impact for Georgia.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, Barton, when you consider Alabama. We're used to seeing them at the top of not only the SEC, but also the entire country. What's it say about the job Kirby Smart's doing there at Georgia to have a top-notch number 1 recruiting class like this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the number 1 ranking speaks for itself. The contextual ranking there, looking back year over year, speaks for itself. The 7 5-stars speak for themselves. But really, I mean, one of the most telling illustrations of how impressive this Georgia class is or has been is Alabama's ranking. I mean, Alabama is 7th in the country, and I don't think it's a major reach to say if Kirby Smart didn't exist, that Alabama might be number 1, because a lot of the guys that the Tide lost on, that Nick Saban got beat on, were guys that ended up at Georgia. And so that's Alabama's had the number 1 class for 7 straight years. This is the first year they haven't had a #1 recruiting class since 2010, and I really believe that this is not an outlier in the sense that they're going to have their hands full battling Kirby Smart every year, as well as Urban Meyer, who finished #2 at Ohio State. They had a heck of an effort as well.
We're talking with Barton Simmons. You can follow him on Twitter at Barton Simmons. He covers recruiting for 247sports.com as well as college football for CBSSports.com. All right, Barton, what about Tennessee? Jeremy Pruitt's first class and his first year up in Knoxville on Rocky Top. They come in at number 20, I believe, on the 247 Sports rankings. Talk about his class a little bit.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways today, National Signing Day, was disappointing for Tennessee. They had really made a ton of progress and had created some waves with their early signing period, had created some waves with some of the momentum they were building into January. But as the day arrived, just didn't have enough gas in the tank to really close on some of the guys they were really pushing for. So it's sort of a two-part answer there. I think signing day itself was a bit of a disappointment, but I do think that the class in general, the effort that Jeremy Pruitt put together, is a win. I think you got to feel really confident about the direction of your recruiting under Jeremy Pruitt, and I got to be honest with you, I think 2019 is about to be a big-time year for Tennessee on the recruiting trail.
Yeah, and when you consider that Jeremy Pruitt had so much on his plate, he gets there in December, and then right after that's the early signing day, and then, oh, by the way, he's coaching the defense for Alabama throughout the college football playoff process, then back to Knoxville to finish up recruiting. All in all, all that, and that being your first year, maybe coming in at number 20 this year, not so bad when you consider what he can do going forward.
I think so, and I think, again, you sort of look at some of the little wins they had. I mean, hey, they lost a kid named Jordan Young today to Florida State, and that hurts to lose him. But the only reason that kid was even on Florida State's radar is because Tennessee found him. They found this really, really good football player out of nowhere. And I think they did the same thing today and landed a kid named Joseph Norwood, who's out of Chattanooga, who didn't play football as a junior, and is a really elite athlete, state champion long jumper, and great basketball player, and just a raw kid. They decided this kid was good enough, and I'm telling you what, I believe them. I mean, I've seen it. I've seen it on film. I think this kid is the real deal. Maybe not ready to play year one, but ready to play year 2 or 3 and really be an impact guy. And just the fact that they're digging these kind of guys up, I think, gives you some optimism for what's to come under Jeremy Pruitt's tenure as a recruiter.
Barton Simmons is our guest. All right, let's switch gears, talk about Vanderbilt. I believe they came in at 41 in their recruiting class. Talk about the job Derek Mason did this year in this year's class.
Yeah, they had a couple of disappointing losses late in the game. On signing day, they lost one to UCLA, Memphis kid named Rashad Williams, who's a really big, long corner. But I do think in the bigger picture, this was a pretty productive class and a successful effort for Derek Mason. Sure, it would have been nice to close 1 or 2 more guys towards the finish line, but 12th in the SEC. They did a pretty good job in state. They got a couple of local guys, in Cameron Johnson and Gavin Schoenwald, who are really talented guys from down the road. Brendan Harris from Chattanooga. They got some highly regarded players on the national scale, too. Austin Orji, a really athletic linebacker out of Texas. And so I think that this is a class that during Derek Mason's tenure, I think probably one of his better efforts.
And we talk about it every year, Barton. And by the way, we're talking with Barton Simmons here on Sportsline. We talk about it every year with the academic standards at Vanderbilt. I mean, that makes Mason's job that much tougher. So to turn in a top 50, top 40 class, that's pretty impressive, all things considered.
It is, and because of that, it's never going to be they're never going to be perennial top 10 classes at Vanderbilt. I think we saw James Franklin sneak into the top 25 and kind of get in that range for a couple of years. But that's not necessarily Derek Mason's MO. I think that they really pride themselves being able to evaluate, being able to develop as well. And so I think that they're right within striking distance of where they want to be with the talent they're going to be bringing on campus and with the way they're going to coach those guys up.
Were you able to get a good look at Middle Tennessee's recruiting class, or were you able to learn anything about that, what Rick Stockstill did?
Yeah, I mean, I think that MTSU has got a couple guys that I'm pretty excited about. I mean, I think they got a cornerback, a defensive back out of the junior college ranks that is, I think, one of the better JUCO signees out there. I had a chance to see him in high school a little bit. He's a Mississippi State bounce back, guy named Chris Stamps, and I think he's got a chance to be really good. A kid that could, you look at some guys they put in the NFL recently out of the defensive backfield. I think he's got that kind of upside. Jarrett Campbell, a kid out of Murfreesboro, is a really talented, versatile kid that they've been able to land. And then there's this kid named Jordan Branch out of Crockett County, he's about 6'1", he's about 270 pounds. He plays running back for his high school. But he's probably a defensive lineman on the next level. All kinds of upside there in him. So when you're MTSU, I think you're trying to dig up a few names like that, a couple of guys you think may have slipped through the cracks, that got a chance to be really special. I think that's what they've done here with a couple guys. Yeah,
and Coach Stock is able to use a guy like Kevin Byard, who all he did was go first team All-Pro this year and make the Pro Bowl. Bring him back to Murfreesboro and help beat the drum for the program as well. That can't hurt matters.
Yeah, and they got another kid that's got a chance to be a pretty good NFL draft prospect at the defensive back position this year. I'm blanking on his name as I'm talking to you right now, but it's not unheard of for them to be producing that kind of player to play at that level. And so those are the type of things that they really lean on. Travarius Ward, I think, is the guy that I have in mind right now. But again, I think Chris Stamps is a kid in this class that's got the potential to be that sort of player for them.
How about outside of Middle Tennessee, outside the SEC, the rest of the country? How did some of the other big schools do? Your Ohio State, your Michigans, USC, those schools.
Yeah, Ohio State had a back and forth with Georgia for the #1 class today. That was they had finished #2. Great year for Ohio State, elite class. Most years they're #1. Texas, big response in Tom Herman's second class, landed up all the way at #3 after a really strong cycle. And then USC was one of the stories of the day. Really, they started the day outside the top 10, finished 4th. That's pretty standard protocol for USC. We always seem to see them finishing really strong on signing day, and they did it once again, really battling and fighting off a lot of SEC programs for a couple of elite players out there, Isaac Taylor-Stewart and Elijah Griffin, two kind of borderline 5-star cornerbacks. So, USC sort of reasserted themselves as the king of the West in terms of recruiting.
All right, Barton, what's next for you? Now you get started on the class of 2019 already. Does the cycle pretty much never stop for you, or do you get a chance to relax and breathe a little bit?
Oh, it never stops. I mean, we're playing catch-up now. All these college coaches they've had all January to focus on recruiting and evaluating underclassmen since they had so many guys locked up in December. So we got to catch up to those guys and figure out who they're liking and get moving on 2019 and 2020. So certainly no rest for the weary at this time of year.
No question about it. Barton, please get your plugs in. How can people keep up with you?
Sure, yeah. CBSSports.com is where you find a lot of my writing on to recap this stuff. And then 24/7 Sports is going to be a great resource for anybody who's trying to get sort of the deeper dive on your favorite team and what they did on signing day. We got a lot coming your way over the next week or so.
And you can also follow him at Barton Simmons. Barton, great to have you on, man. I appreciate it. Again, I know it's been a crazy busy day for you, but it really means a lot you coming on for a few minutes tonight.
Of course, man. We'll love to do it, and good talking to you.
All right, that's the great Barton Simmons getting everybody up to date and up to speed on what's going on with recruiting. We'll talk more recruiting as we take our first break. We'll come back and we'll hear from Tennessee coach Jeremy Pruitt, talk about his class. Later on, we'll hear from Vandy coach Derek Mason. We're also going to hear from some of the new assistant coaches of the Tennessee Titans. So a very football-heavy show, plus your phone calls are always welcome, 737-7767. Give us a call. We'd love to hear from you tonight. We're back after this. Stay with us.